High in the mountains of the Russian Caucasus, there is a lake that seems to challenge almost everything we expect from a normal lake. Scientists have tried for decades to understand exactly how deep it is, yet its true bottom is still uncertain. Its water stays close to 9 degrees Celsius throughout the year. Winter or summer, near the surface or hundreds of feet below, the temperature barely changes. There are no fish living in it, and the water contains unusually high levels of hydrogen sulfide. Even more strangely, huge amounts of water flow out of the lake every single day. Yet there is no obvious river flowing into it. Much of that water appears to come from deep underground. This place is called the Lower Blue Lake, also known as Tserik-Kel. It lies about 40 kilometers south of Nalchik in Kabardino-Balkaria, Russia, more than 800 meters above sea level. From the surface, it does not look especially large. The lake is only about 235 meters long and 130 meters wide, roughly the size of a few football fields. You could walk around much of it in a short time, but standing at the edge feels completely different. The water can appear almost unreal. On clear days, it can glow turquoise blue. Under darker skies, it turns deep blue. The water is extremely clear, especially in the upper layers, creating the feeling that you are looking into a giant piece of blue glass. For generations, local people told stories that the lake had no bottom. For a long time, scientists treated that idea as a legend. Many deep holes and lakes around the world were once called bottomless simply because people did not have long enough ropes or good enough equipment to measure them. Researchers assumed the same thing would happen here. Eventually, they believed they would simply measure the bottom and end the mystery. But the more they explored the lake, the stranger it became. The local name Tserik-Kel is often connected with the strong sulfur smell that can rise from the water. This smell comes mainly from hydrogen sulfide, a gas that smells similar to rotten eggs. The chemistry of the lake is unusual. Its clear blue color is partly connected to the purity of the water and the small amount of algae and suspended material near the surface. But that beauty can be dangerous. Underwater, the visibility can initially be excellent. A diver may be able to see far into the blue water. That can create a false feeling of safety. One movement near the bottom or a cave wall can disturb fine sediment. Within seconds, clear water can become a thick cloud. Visibility can drop almost to zero. And in an underwater cave system, losing visibility can mean losing your sense of direction. Scientists began making serious attempts to study the lake during the 20th century. Early measurements suggested depths of around 100 to 150 meters. That was deep, but not impossible. At first, it seemed like the mystery would soon be solved. But those early measurements had only revealed part of the lake. As diving technology improved, researchers began going deeper. By the early 2000s, the lake had developed a dark reputation among technical divers. There were even stories that famous ocean explorer Jacques Cousteau had once tried to study the lake and failed to find its true bottom. There is little reliable evidence confirming that story. But the legend shows how mysterious the lake had become. A major international expedition came to the lake in 2012. The team included experienced cave divers, scientists, geologists, and underwater explorers. Their goal was simple: go deeper, map the underwater structure, and finally understand what was beneath the lake. But deep diving is extremely dangerous. At depths beyond 100 meters, a diver faces enormous pressure. Breathing normal air becomes unsafe, special gas mixtures must be used. The deeper a diver goes, the more carefully every part of the dive must be planned. At great depth, gases can affect the brain and cause confusion. This is known as nitrogen narcosis. A diver may feel relaxed, confused, or unable to make good decisions. And the danger does not end when the diver starts going back up. Returning to the surface too quickly can cause decompression sickness. Under high pressure, gases dissolve into the body's tissues. If the diver rises too fast, those gases can form bubbles inside the blood and tissues, similar to what happens when a soda bottle is opened suddenly. These bubbles can cause severe pain, paralysis, organ damage, or death. That is why deep divers must rise slowly and make long decompression stops. At this lake, the problem is even more complicated because it is located high in the mountains. Air pressure at altitude is lower than at sea level. This affects decompression calculations and makes already dangerous dives even more difficult. During the 2012 expedition, tragedy struck. Russian diver Andrei Rodionov entered the lake and did not return. His body was never recovered. The accident showed just how dangerous this environment could be. Later, British technical diver Martin Robson made one of the deepest dives ever attempted in the lake. He reached about 209 meters. At that depth, the surrounding pressure is more than 20 times the pressure at the surface. Robson survived the dive, but something went badly wrong during his return. He suffered severe decompression sickness and had to be rushed for emergency treatment. He survived after a long and difficult recovery. But even after reaching more than 200 meters, he had still not found the true end of the underwater system. That was one of the biggest surprises. The lake was not behaving like a normal bowl-shaped lake. Something much more complicated was hidden below. In 2016, another major scientific expedition arrived. This time, researchers used more advanced equipment, including underwater robots, cameras, sonar sensors, and detailed mapping tools. Divers and robotic systems carried out hundreds of dives. The expedition reached depths of around 279 meters. And that is where researchers discovered something extremely important. The lake did not simply end there. Instead, they found entrances leading into underwater caves. Not just one small opening. A whole network of tunnels and chambers extended into the surrounding mountain. Some passages were large enough to imagine a vehicle moving through them. Others became narrow cracks. This discovery completely changed the way scientists understood the lake. Lower Blue Lake is not simply a deep hole filled with water. It is part of a much larger underground karst system. Karst landscapes form mainly in rocks such as limestone. Limestone can slowly dissolve when water passes through cracks. Over thousands or even millions of years, water can create caves, tunnels, chambers, shafts, and underground rivers. That appears to be exactly what happened here. The visible lake may only be the upper opening of a much larger flooded cave system hidden inside the mountain. That helps explain why finding a simple bottom is so difficult. The underwater structure is complicated. It can widen into large chambers, then narrow into small passages, then turn sideways into another tunnel. A sonar signal can bounce off different walls and return confusing information. Robots can lose orientation. Divers can enter side passages and struggle to find the main route back. Even advanced equipment can have trouble mapping a complex cave system filled with sharp changes in direction. During exploration, another problem appears. Sediment. Fine material can sit quietly on underwater surfaces for years, but a diver or robot can disturb it. Once that happens, the water can become cloudy almost instantly. Cameras stop seeing clearly. Sonar becomes harder to interpret, and exploration becomes much more dangerous. That is one reason the deepest parts of the system remain difficult to map. Researchers have discovered several strange objects underwater as well. One famous example is an old truck found deep inside the lake. Local stories had long claimed that a vehicle once fell into the water while carrying barrels of wine. Explorers eventually found what appeared to be an old truck, but the legendary wine was not there. Maybe it had never existed. Maybe it had been removed. Maybe the containers had broken apart long ago. The lake kept the mystery alive. But an even bigger question remains. Why is there so little visible life in the lake? Most lakes support fish, insects, algae, plants, microorganisms, or other forms of life. Lower Blue Lake is very different. Fish are essentially absent. The deeper water contains very little oxygen. At the same time, hydrogen sulfide concentrations increase. Hydrogen sulfide is toxic to most familiar forms of animal life. This creates an environment where many organisms simply cannot survive. The deeper you go, the more hostile the water becomes. Near the surface, the lake can interact with the atmosphere. That means oxygen can enter the water. But deeper down, oxygen levels become much lower. Hydrogen sulfide becomes more important. The result is a chemically extreme environment. That does not necessarily mean absolutely no microorganisms exist anywhere in the system, but it does explain why normal lake life such as fish cannot survive there. Another major mystery is the temperature. The lake stays close to 9 degrees Celsius throughout the year. In many normal lakes, surface water changes temperature with the seasons. It warms during summer. It cools during winter. Different layers can form at different temperatures. But Lower Blue Lake is strongly influenced by underground water. Instead of depending mainly on rain or melting snow, much of its water appears to rise from deep underground through cracks and caves in the limestone. That groundwater has already spent a long time underground, protected from rapid changes in weather. By the time it reaches the lake, its temperature is relatively stable. The constant flow also helps mix the water. So, summer heat and winter cold have much less effect than they would in a shallow surface lake. This underground water system also helps explain another strange fact. A huge amount of water leaves the lake every day, but there is no large surface river constantly pouring into it. The water is entering from below. Hidden springs and underground channels feed the lake. Then water flows outward. In other words, what we see at the surface may only be one small opening in a much larger underground plumbing system inside the mountain. And that may be the real reason this lake feels so mysterious. From above, it looks small. But underneath, it may connect to a large network of flooded caves, cracks, chambers, and underground water passages. Scientists have measured parts of it. Divers have reached extreme depths. Robots have entered places humans cannot safely reach. Yet the deepest structure of the entire system is still not completely mapped. So, does the lake literally have no bottom? Probably not. Every cave system must eventually be limited by rock. But the important point is that scientists still do not fully know the complete shape, deepest passages, or total underground extent of this flooded system. And that makes Lower Blue Lake far more interesting than the old legend. The truth is not that the lake breaks the laws of science. The truth is that science is still working to understand just how large and complicated the hidden world beneath it really is.